Welcome to Cure America. I'm Star Parker. And as so much despair has gripped our nation during these difficult times, I decided to go into some of our nation's most distressed communities with a message of hope and truth. I've been working on public policy issues dealing with race and poverty through my organization, Urban Cure, for 25 years. So this summer, we decided to purchase some billboard space in some of our hard-hit zip codes across the country and give them a short, time-tested message that strikes at the heart of what drives poverty. The billboard showed a picture of a young black man and a young black woman, and then it asked a simple question: tired of poverty? Then it says, finish school, take any job, get married, save and invest, give back to your neighborhood. The billboards then refer to Proverbs 10:4, which says, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent rules. It's followed up also with a message on our website that will lead them to other tools that they can use to survive and to thrive. This is a message delivered with care and love. It's a message that we know is true. It is so true that it produced an immediate reaction from Black Lives Matters, who contacted the billboard company Clear Channel Outdoors, demanding that the billboards be taken down. Claims from Black Lives Matters, laced with their profanity, of course. They were claiming that the message was racist and sexist, inaccurate and self-hating. This was a distortion from reality. In fact, I know the accuracy of the message from my own personal experiences in life. When I was a young woman, I was full of disdain for the establishment. And in rebellion, I began a crazy course of living. Criminal activity, drug activity, sexual promiscuity, in and out of welfare dependency. I was going nowhere. Then two Christian businessmen straightened me out. They gave me a message and a guidance that saved my life. So aside from my personal experience and my daily learning as a Christian, attempting to mature in that Christianity, I also know the truth of this message from years of policy work here in Washington, D.C. The impact of the success sequence on poverty is well documented. Brookings Institution scholars Ron Haskin and Isabel Sawhill published their findings in a book called Creating an Opportunity Society, where they report that those who follow 3 steps, finish high school, get a full-time job, get married before you have children, they face a 2% chance of being poor. Brad Wilcox and Wendy Wang of the American Enterprise Institute, they followed up on this work, and they showed that among millennials ages 28 to 35, that there was a 53% incident of poverty among those who did not follow these 3 steps, and a 3% incident of poverty among those that did. But regardless of whether you want to believe me or agree with me, what about just the freedom of expression? What about the inherent importance of keeping dialogue open and free in our nation with the goal of maybe reaching some truth? How can shutting down communication serve anyone's interest? But shutting down dialogue, shutting down free and open exchange of ideas is exactly what Black Lives Matters is demanding. They said it so much on their Facebook post that they wrote to the billboard company, Clear Channel Outdoor. They said, at the end of the day, in quotes, messaging and narrative control is priceless. So I thought we should think about how it seems a cancel culture movement is aggressively forcing points of view that they disagree with out of the public square. That's what we're going to talk about this week on Cure America. I have some very special guests to weigh in on some critical questions, like should we as a society allow Black Lives Matters and their allies to tell companies how they should do business? Or what about the question of what can we do to stop the threats of violence and intimidation occurring on a regular basis now against average citizens who simply disagree with secularism, who simply disagree with government systems like socialism? What has happened in our society that far too many business owners and churches, families, and our students are being pressured into silence, being canceled, being revoked, being shamed, being doxxed, when they just disagree with certain ideas or instructions or public policies? These are some interesting questions, and they're causing much concern and debate. So you're going to hear from my distinguished panel. They're going to help us sort through some of this noise in the news to find some truth. I'm excited to dive into this discussion with you, and I will right after this very important message.
Hello, I'm Franklin Graham. Right now, we're in Alaska unloading a hospital for COVID-19. But right now, our country is in trouble, and people are scared, people are afraid, and we see the violence and the injustices that are taking place. Only God can change this. This is a problem of the human heart, and we have sinned against God, and as a nation, we've turned our back on God. And I want you to know that God loves you, He cares for you, and He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, from heaven to this earth to take our sins. And if we'll confess them and repent, turn from them, and believe on His Son, Jesus Christ, God will forgive us and He'll heal our hearts. If you've never invited Christ into your heart, pray this prayer with me right now. Just say, God, I'm a sinner. I'm sorry, forgive me. I believe Jesus Christ is your Son. I want to trust Him as my Savior. I want to follow Him as Lord from this day forward forever. Amen. Call that number right now that's on the screen. We've got someone who will pray with you, talk with you, encourage you. God bless.
Welcome back, and as you know, I want to talk to you about something very serious today, and I have a really, really special guest, a friend, but also someone that understands firsthand this cancel culture, has been dealing with it for quite some time in his own life. Frank Gaffney. Frank is the founder and executive chairman of the Center for Security Policy here in Washington, D.C. It's a not-for-profit, it's a nonpartisan educational corporation. It was established in ¡88, and under his leadership, they become very well known nationally and internationally, which is why they'd love to cancel him out, as you'll find out why, because he deals with issues of foreign and defense policy matters, and they assess them. Frank is the host of Secure Freedom Radio. It's a nationally syndicated radio program. He's an associate author, highly acclaimed. He's written a book called Sharia, The Threat to America, and he's published over a dozen books on these various topics that are alarming on surface, especially when we're thinking about international, but now we're talking in America. So, Frank, thank you for joining me. Yeah, thank you. I needed to talk to you because, you know, we're now dealing with something very, very threatening in our country. And I don't use that word lightly. We are really in a problem when you have people that think that they can cancel others, that they can force them underground, that they can take their jobs, that they can take their securities, that they can show up at their homes, that they can intimidate. I mean, we haven't seen this type of aggression since the KKK, if you will. And I think that some of the behaviors and tactics of Black Lives Matters and Antifa are similar. But I wanted to talk to you about this because you've been looking at these issues bigger for quite some time, and you've even told me at certain points in our conversations that there may even be some connections to real communism, like as in Chinese communism.
Yes, there are.
Welcome.
Thank you, Star. This is one symptom that you've described of a much larger problem, unfortunately. It'd be bad enough if all we were dealing with were people who are trying to desperately censor or suppress Americans, in violation, by the way, of our constitutional rights in many cases. Unfortunately, that's just a piece of what I think really is a full-on revolution that is now underway, that is determined to get rid of that Constitution, not just deny us certain rights we have under it, but replace it with the workers' paradise, or the socialist vision of a utopia in which we are all going to be equally given opportunities, we're going to have equal outcomes of those opportunities, we're all going to get paid the same, we're all going to get, you know, the same health care, such as it would be. We've seen this movie before, Star, as you know. It does not end well.
No.
Ever.
Ever.
And it won't end well in this country if, God forbid, we wind up succumbing to it. But it's so seductive. And when you've got as many young people, particularly, who've really been indoctrinated over the years by successive generations of teachers and you know, colleagues and employers even, they are susceptible to the idea that capitalism is unfair. And we must replace it with something better. And so when it comes to trying to make sure that people who say, no, don't do that, it's a disaster, that's So, to be sure, very troubling, but it's only part of this larger campaign to change, fundamentally
transform. They said that. But the point you just made about how now, for those that are saying, no, don't do that, there, in a very recent history, we were able to at least discuss the reasons. Now you can't even discuss them. So I want to ask you, what happened? How did our children get so vulnerable? Where were the parents that they became so vulnerable that our colleges became just basically indoctrination centers to where this worldview has now taken home, that you have millennials still just targeting our streets, targeting people. We're reading stories now where people who even founded the company can't work at his own company.
Yeah. A friend of mine is a fellow by the name of Jeff Nyquist. He goes by J.R. Nyquist, and he's got a terrific blog, jrnyquist.blog. I interview him on my radio show regularly, and one of the things that he said, I think on our very first meeting, was he was at Berkeley, I believe, as a graduate student, you know, sort of early on in the sort of first version.
Oh yeah,
the
well, we know the revolution, and they were talking about that in the 60s, exactly. Yeah. And many of those folks actually went to communist countries or they Cuba too, as well as or to the university to become professors.
Yeah, well, this is the point. He was saying that, you know, he remembered, and I have my time may be wrong. Maybe he was reading about it at the time, but he remembered people saying that with the fall of the Soviet Union, with the triumph of freedom over the USSR, my old boss Ronald Reagan's great project of trying to liberate hundreds of millions of people, a number of folks in this country particularly sort of clucked about the fact that the only place Marxists were still going to be operating were in our academic institutions. And he said, but that's a disaster.
Yes.
You let them have access to your kids, and inevitably you get to where we are now, Star. I think that's a big part of it. But look, let's face it.
But how? Why didn't the parents see it? Yes, where were we?
Look, partly I think, you know, we wanted the kids to experience these educational opportunities on their own. I think partly we were lazy. I think partly we were intimidated by the idea that we would actually have to stand up and say, wait a minute, that's wrong. But whatever the explanation, whatever the contributing factors, we've now inculcated in, as I say, probably 2 or maybe even 3 generations of Americans this idea that, you know, this is a terrible country. It's a racist country. It's a country that is unfair to large numbers of people, and fundamental transformation is not only what's needed, it's what we deserve.
What deserve, now demand. I mean, they are getting to where it's just demanded. But there are 2 things I want to ask you about. One is in your own experiences, because you actually in attempts to get this truth out, even here in Washington, D.C., that you were being blocked, even from what we might call conservatives, people that should have been more open to say, is there really a problem? Maybe we should look deeper. But number 2, there really isn't anything attractive about Marxism anywhere in the world. So even if our kids were vulnerable, how are they enticed into believing a worldview that, if you look anywhere in history, didn't work, was deathly to others, and yet America continues to prosper even when it has aggression against it, surviving wars, even a civil war.
Yeah.
You know, they're telling me that I need to go onto this little break. So I'm going to be right back in a moment to talk with Frank, because I think we have to explore this a little bit deeper. I want him to answer those 2 questions. We'll be back.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress topper, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, only $29.99 with your promo code. With our 60-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Sleep well, America!
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Serious things to think about, and my very special guest gave us more to think about. So I'm going to ask now that our panel gets involved in the discussion, because we have to talk about this cancel culture. I mean, they're asking a lot of us right now, so as a society. So I have, of course, my Dr. William Allen, Chief Operating Officer of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Welcome, Doctor.
Yeah, hello.
Very nice being with you, and again. And then Richard Manning is back. Hi, Richard, President of Americans for Limited Government, a public affairs professional with expertise and extensive background in communications, government relations, grassroots organizations. That's why I know him, as well as he is my co-author on my book, Necessary Noise. And so welcome again.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're back.
I really love being here.
Well, good, because you need to move whatever that is that took away from our time that we couldn't be together. So I'm so glad that you're able to return, because this is a hot topic, and I know that you have a lot to tell us. And also, we need legal counsel. So I have my Jonathan Alexandre again. Thank you. And not too much legal counsel, and I'm not asking you for free time. What I'm asking for is to keep us out of jail time as we talk about this very sensitive subject, because it does get sensitive. So thank you. Jonathan is Senior Counsel for Government Affairs at Liberty Counsel and their Action. So I suppose that the difference in the two, you have the Liberty Counsel.
Right, and then a public policy arm that actually goes on the Hill and hopes to make a difference in the public policy world.
Well, I know that you are making a difference in the public policy world, because you guys take on some amazing cases and win.
Yes, ma'am. It's been a very busy time with trying to reestablish some of the basic First Amendment principles, and so we've been out in the courtrooms, but also in the legislature and in the Court of Public Square, making the argument that every American should have these unalienable rights, and that the Bill of Rights affirms certain very simple principles that, unfortunately, in this day and age, we have to continue fighting for.
Well, we do, and in fact, then I'm going to start with you, because I'm extremely concerned about this cancel culture. And I looked up the definition. It's to be culturally blocked from having a prominent public platform or career.
Wow.
And they're really stopping people. Our last guest talked about the enemy within. His specialty is looking at China and other outside forces that may try to influence us, but he specifically discussed with us the enemy within. And I'm wondering, has Black Lives Matters and this whole cancel culture movement adopted Klan behavior? I mean, this is really aggressive. What used to be boycotts, and I'm asking all of you, what used to be just the boycotts of yesterday are now outright just bullying. Right. And I'm just very concerned. They're going to people's homes, they're going to their businesses, they're threatening violence. The list is very long about people that have been canceled. So isn't any of this illegal?
Right, and so criticism in a society, you expect criticism, and there's going to be disagreement, but this is punishment, right? Cancel culture is punishment. It's going after a person's assets, it's going after their livelihood, it's going after their associations, people that are allied with them, and saying that because we disagree with one thing that they said, all of their body of work is no longer relevant. You shouldn't pay attention to them, and they should have no place in the public square.
But public square, they're talking about public life. They're making it so that you can't even make a living anymore, and they're really pushing against you being even present, being able to not be shamed. Richard, based on your expertise, I know that you've been following this particular. This list is really long. I mean, what does it mean when you say you're going to cancel someone?
It means you're going to effectively eliminate them from having a say. You're going to make them null and void. And, I think a lot of people are aware of the Nick Sandmann case, where basically radicals attacked him simply because he was standing there with a MAGA hat on after a Right to Life march.
Right, he had just bought that hat.
He just bought the hat. He's standing there minding his own business, waiting for the bus to come.
And he was a young kid. He was
18 years old at Covington High School. And he stood up to these people. But we watched 2-3 weeks of the media just beat on this kid until somebody said, wait a second, the guy who was actually the aggressor was the person who approached him. He never did anything, and they attacked him because he supposedly had a smirk on his face. And it was
I think it's from a little town in Kentucky. He's
little town
probably
in
scared
Kentucky.
to death. I'm in Washington, D.C., standing in front of Lincoln
and all of a sudden-
Memorial. I don't even know what
being
to
attacked
do.
by some old dude.
Yeah,
and
really,
it was,
really.
and you know, so that's cancel culture because they were basically trying to negate anybody who wanted to wear a MAGA hat and say, if you wear that hat, you are worthy of being shouted down, abused, and essentially ripped apart in the media.
Well, it's beyond that now. Dr. Allen,
Yes.
Urban Cure has an issue at hand. I mean, billboards, put up simple billboards. Could you tell us a little bit about what happened and how it
Certainly.
feels to be in the cancel cultured seat?
Well, I'm happy to say it in a way because it's an opportunity. We tried to put up very simple billboards. Really, bromides. I hate to call them that, but I might as well be honest. We told things that everybody knows. We said, look, you want to get ahead in the world? Then get a good education. You want to get ahead in the world? Find a job. You want to get ahead in the world? Marry before you have children. And you know, when you succeed, give back to your community. That was our billboard, with a couple of lovely young people there to illustrate it, bright, attractive, intelligent. But we somehow offended the BLM mindset. And they thought anybody who is encouraging, especially black people, and this was centered in Milwaukee initially, is therefore undermining their attempt to use black people as victims to undermine this society. So what we're seeing happening, cancel culture is something like the following. Remember the Southern Poverty Law Center? They pioneered a very useful technique, going after outright racists through tort litigation to put them out of business.
Right.
The lesson learned from that by the radicals now is you don't have to stop at going after them with tort. You can use coercion, intimidation. You want to put them out of business. You want to put them out of society. You want to put them out of the culture. You want to silence them. And so it's gone to the level now that they will no longer accept a common relationship with the rest of us in a society in which we can have differing opinions and express them, even when they're as simple as those we expressed on our billboards.
Well, Jonathan, tort, where we actually have a legal opportunity to say, let's reason together. I mean, we have arbitration opportunities in our society. We have differences. Even the political is about differences.
Absolutely.
And let's see if we can reconcile around one idea that will be for the common good. But now we're seeing extreme violence. And in a situation like with these billboards, to where a Black Lives Matter Milwaukee can interject themselves into a contract that a business has with someone else. This seems like it would be a legal violation.
Yeah, so there's tort law, as you mentioned, tortious interference with a contractual relationship where a third party comes in and provides damage of some sort or a harm to what's going on between the two parties that are contracting in hopes of dissolving that contract or having one of the parties not perform their end of the bargain. And so, of course, there's a claim for that. You'd have to show damages that we were, in fact, harmed by it. And I think not only the incidental harm of the community not being able to read those messages, but the harm of the reputation to Cure. Cure now being vilified.
They're going after us, and they're using their language to go after us and go after me. I mean, it's just like, go get her. But let me ask you about this tortious interference. Okay, so when did that, do you know the history of it? Like, are there cases? It sounds almost like something you would need against the mafia.
Yeah, so they're, very simple claims. If two parties are going for a contract, they're bidding on the same contract, and one of them tells the other contracting party, well, we'll provide this incentive that the other party can't provide, and oh, by the way, they're not even good enough to work with. And it's because of that the bid goes to the other party. So certain innocuous things in the law that have to do with bidding and such have brought forward this claim or this particular cause of action in the law. But it can be used in situations like this where there is a specific attack against an individual meant to defame them, meant to slander them, and because of that attack, the other party that you have a contractual relationship with is saying, well, I don't want to touch that. That area of law has definitely evolved to include the situation with Cure.
Situation like this, and so we'll have to look at that. But Richard, I'm wondering about this, with the point that Dr. Allen made, that this is a strategy that has been being used, and we saw the Southern Poverty Law Center expand beyond we're going after Nazis and KKKs and then started getting into that gray area about who decided that this particular business shouldn't be able to voice their opinions. then we saw it in pop culture, you know, in movies and stuff, they were using this, we're going to cancel you, and then girls, broken heart, I'm canceling you. But it's political now, isn't it? It seems like this is driven by an agenda.
It's definitely driven by an agenda. And, you know, one of the things that's most incredible about this is we've seen this progress rather rapidly in our society, to the point where, in your situation, where an honest opinion that actually is factually based is taken out of the public square. It didn't have any kind of bias, had nothing that was at all anything but a factual statement, and yet it was deemed to be somehow so offensive that it had to be taken down, and the company went along with it. This is
I know, that's the really sad part.
But the point is, to me, is that they now have, since nobody has stood up to them, since there's been an acquiescence by the so-called elite to this attack on any idea that's different than the one dictated by these radical, really communists who are
bullies.
trying to,
I know.
Bullies.
Yeah, but I like the word communist more.
But that's what they are. But
yeah.
So they're using a really old technique. The one thing you should notice is, like in the Democratic Convention, there was not one mention of the rioting. There's not one mention of what was happening on the streets. And yet on the streets, they walk around with signs that say silence is consent. Well, the silence of the Democrats at their convention is effectively consent for the abuse that these people are heaping on America, and for the riots in the streets, and for the burning of our cities.
Because, Dr. Allen, they went to the local office.
Yep.
Now, I've been to Milwaukee, and although it's considered a large town, it's not a Los Angeles or New York. These are still the heartland Americans.
Yes.
These are people that probably in some little quiet office building, they're sitting there putting together billboards. They had to be totally caught off guard and shocked to have not only this attack against them come crazily at them. You better take them down, or we're tearing them down and burn them down. But to then list their phone numbers on the internet to go.
Well, this too is familiar, isn't it? When the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution, it responded to a specific problem. And that was the problem in which you would have the law officers go out by day and take guns away from black people so that the Klan could come by night and intimidate them, terrorize them. In other words, there was an interaction between those responsible for law enforcement and those perpetrating the violence.
Wow.
And guess what you're seeing today?
What?
You're seeing those responsible for law enforcement not restraining the terrorists.
That is right. Oh, my.
And the terrorists taking advantage of the opportunity, just the way the Klan did, in order to intimidate innocent people.
You went all the way back to the 14th Amendment, but we saw this throughout Black history all the way up until the Civil Rights Act, because what was it, the Tulsa riots of 1921?
In the 1920s, yes.
They went and just destroyed entire communities. And so how, Jonathan, are they getting away with this? That with such history of Americans, is it that most Americans just don't know that this is a continuum of just terror.
And it's the double standard, right? If you had produced a message that was consistent with what they wanted, if you were speaking the parlance of the day.
Oh, like say, just stay po, guys, we got you.
Exactly. They'd champion
come out here
that.
and rob with us.
They wouldn't have an issue with any of those statements. But
they call me racist. They say I'm racist, and then they saw that I was black as a local news, and then they got, and they're like, and then when they heard my story, it was like, maybe, but they're still cowards. They're still, they won't put them back up. But go ahead, I don't mean to
that's exactly right. If you are speaking the language of the day, and that's ultimately what they want to do. If they can't silence you, they'll let you speak, but only if you're going to speak the message that at the time is more convenient for them, or at the time is getting the full air.
Well, that's what they said.
Yeah, just think about the contrast between you and Oprah Winfrey. Her billboard in Louisville is taking the side of BLM.
Right.
Nobody's forcing it to be taken down. Right. Nobody's protesting.
That's right. That was the next city we were going to. Or what about that ad in the newspapers where they have the poor, pitiful black all the time saying, give to me because I'm poor.
Yes.
And no one says that this is offensive at all. But when you have aspiring African Americans on a billboard and you're asking them to do some simple things that are time tested, you're the one that pointed out to me me that these are moral truths. These are home truths. These are, what was the third one? Scientific truths. That's absolutely a formula that works. So, Richard, I don't know what we're going to do about these cancel, because this list is getting really long.
First of all, the Supreme Court decided in the 50s something called Alabama v. NAACP. And the state of Alabama was trying to get the membership list of the NAACP so they could, in fact, go out and publish them and go after the people. That was doxing.
So Alabama was trying to get the state of Alabama was trying to get the NAACP's list, because now they're starting to say push back on this Klan stuff. But go ahead.
And so they were trying to get the list, and the practice was they'd find the people on the list, they'd go and intimidate the people on the list, particularly the white people on the list. So that was 1950s doxing. Today, you take the people who are allowing a billboard to go up, you put their phone number out, you tell everybody nationwide to call them, you ruin their lives, you make them miserable, and that's the modern day doxing that we saw back in, that actually the Supreme Court had to step in and say, no, NAACP, you do not have to make your list public, you don't have to make your donors public, and the reason for that was to protect those donors and allow those donors to have freedom of speech and freedom of being able to engage with whatever group they wanted to without fear of intimidation.
Well, I'm glad to know that we have Supreme Court precedent on that, because this is getting very serious. I'm looking at this list. I mean, you got the head of video at Condé Nast, you got the top editor at the Philadelphia Inquirer, you got the CEO and founder of Cross. I mean, this list is getting really long. These are lists of canceled people. This list is long, but I better get up out of here because I can hear the music starting. But I'm going to keep my panel over, because now we have to solve this problem. We have to explore some ideas on how we get ourselves out of this dilemma we're in. We'll talk about that right after this. Excited about that last panel, because even though there's a lot of there was a lot of madness in this issue, it's like the scripture says, where sin abounds, grace much more. And so we know that there's grace too, but we're going to try to get towards some solutions, because it's just not healthy for us not to be able to just express ourselves in a free country. And there have been countries that have been free and they're not free anymore. So I'm very concerned about that. So I have my special panel. Jonathan has joined us. Alexandre, he's a special guest of ours from Liberty Counsel Action. Richard Manning is back from Americans for Limited Government, a very dear friend and co-author of Necessary Noise. If you have not received your copy of Necessary Noise yet, you need to, because you only have a couple of months to get that kind of truth into yourself and get the kind of truth to your neighbor before you go into a very critical election season. So thank you, Richard, for joining and helping out on that particular book. And then Dr. William Allen, a long, long resume that's right here at Urban Cure now as the Chief Operating Officer at Urban Cure, the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. So thank you, Dr. Allen, as well. Dr. Allen, since you're in the hot seat about this attack, if you will, I mean, this is an attack. And in fact, when we got the notice that, can't you simmer it down, as to Jonathan's point last session about, if you put up their message, and like you pointed out, Oprah's message seems to be okay. Sure. But you said it didn't catch you off guard, but it caught me a little off guard. Even though I've been in this battle a long time, and I know that controversial things happen and you get pushed back on, when we try to put up pro-life expressions and don't even attempt to do anything against the LGBTQ community and point out any of the challenges that one might have there. But these were simple truths. These were just, the whole idea was, the next morning they're going to wake up and say, I just think that there are people in our hardest hit zip codes that are crying out for help, and we were attempting to give it to them. Could you speak into that?
Well, certainly the case in an era, a time of corruption, nothing is more offensive than the truth. And it is said the truth shall make you free.
Yeah, well.
But we often forget the truth will make you free if you're willing to fight for it, stand for it. So there are two things we have to do. We at Cure, we have to fight.
Okay.
We have to say to Clear Channel Communication, as I did on the telephone to them, no, we're not going to change our message. We believe in, we stand on the integrity of that message, and we want to hold you to your contract.
Right.
And then we as a people, we can cancel culture. We can cancel culture simply with the vote to be taken in November. Because if that vote goes the right way, cancel culture will be canceled.
Right. It is aggressive. I don't know, Richard. I think that we might see more cities, more fire. Remember what happened in Nigeria when they thought, oh no, if we just want peace, we're going to hire peace, and the peace happened to be a Muslim instead of the Christian that caused a couple of thousand deaths when the Christian won, and so they put the Muslim, and now Boko Haram is like going savage.
They're running the country. Yeah, they'd say, the fact is, everybody has dealt with bullies. And that's what they are. You used the term in the previous segment. It's absolutely right. Everybody's dealt with bullies. The single thing you don't do with a bully is give them your lunch money. Right. Because tomorrow they're going to come back for your lunch money. Right. You tell them no, you look them in the eye, and you basically force them to try to do what they said they're going to do. Right. Because they rarely will, and when they do, you fight back. Right. In your instance, this is a perfect example of a need to stand up and fight, because they are going to, this group that many corporations have given lots of money to, millions upon millions of dollars, they are going to try to enforce it, because if
millions and millions, B of A threw $1 billion at them.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I need to move my account. But here's what they're doing. They're saying if a simple message, inoffensive message that really is just common truth, that's backed up, if that's not allowed, then nothing is allowed that they haven't effectively sanctioned. And so they've become the censors of society. Nobody elected them. Nobody did anything to give these guys power. Yet because they sit there and they intimidate people, people give in to them. And the only way you deal with a bully is to punch him in the nose, and that's what you do legally.
Well, it's interesting, Jonathan, because on Richard's point about bullying, this is not new. And we've seen this attempt to push the black community and the conservative part, the Christian part, into silence. We've seen lawsuits. I mean, this has taken Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton to a whole new level. They have been shaking down corporations for a long time. I remember the case back when I first got started in public policy with Toyota. They said an ad was racist. The next thing you know, Toyota is paying out $450 million in a lawsuit. Then we moved to today, where you have corporations just dumping money, hoping it will go away. The first part of the question is it going to go away if they keep dumping money? And the second part of the question is, how do we encourage these corporations to stop bowing their knee to these bullies?
Right. Hopefully it will go away. I think one way to make it go away is having, an alternative, or your associates or the folks that know and can stand up and make commentary based on your reputation come up alongside you. It's a small facet of culture. It's a powerful facet of culture that is able to cancel who they think shouldn't be prevalent. But
is it small? I don't know. Look at this list.
It's not all of culture. I mean,
Well, I know it's not all, but these guys, they're canceling in entertainment. They're just like, no one can do anything anymore. Boy, these are the same people that keep saying the Bible's hard. Right. Well, look, at least there's some redemption in the Bible.
And
My goodness.
That's how we define culture. One of the examples, Kanye West, right? A very popular guy that had a huge following.
Oh, he's canceled. I saw his name.
And he said, I've been canceled even before it was popular. But Kanye West, within weeks of that statement, released another best-selling album. He was still able to top the chart.
That is true. So a Christian album at that.
Right. It was an alternative culture that he found that really appreciated the work that he's doing. Yeah. And I think that's our avenue. One of the ways we can defeat this is by having a culture that is unique and distinct from the rest of the world.
It is, but Dr. Allen, I don't want to pull out of the general culture. I agree that, okay, we can have alternatives, but how many alternatives are we going to have? Why in the world is it that we should have to, those that are just the decent people in quiet communities, go into the background or try to find an alternative so that they can live in this society, or even pull from B of A? Why would he have to move his bank account?
Well, you may have to move your bank account because you're dealing with the devil. Well, it takes a long spoon, as the saying goes, to sup with the devil. However, we aren't talking about multiculturalism. I want to be clear about that. We're not talking about give us a corner or give us a closet to hide in.
Right.
We're talking about speaking with loud voices in the middle of the public square and daring you to say the opposite, because we know truth will prevail.
Right.
So our idea is, our task is to defend the culture that ought to survive here and to force the culture that's trying to destroy it through revolution to withdraw.
So it's just it is a revolution, but I'm hearing that they're still small enough that we can push it back. It's like physics 101. You know, these are energies, and one of them is a destructive energy, one's a creative energy. But I'm just wondering, Richard, the church doesn't seem to be forceful enough. I mean, they're not even open. They're still not open enough to say, "Hey, we see we're in a battle. Let's even just encourage our people to get up and come back to church to then engage the battle." Are we going to be able to turn this around?
Well, here's what I know. I know for 300 years in the Roman Empire, Christians faced canceling, and Christianity grew. In China, Christians are canceled, and there's 200 million Christians in China.
Oh, wow.
So when you look at it, God uses this kind of abuse for good.
Wow.
And so the question is, are we as Christians going to be bold and speak the truth, or are we going to cower?
Yes.
If we're bold and we speak the truth, truth prevails, because God is sovereign.
Oh, I love it, because Dr. Allen, I was getting this data. Non-Hispanic blacks, males by age, the leading cause of death 2017, homicide for 1 to 19 years old, 35.3%. 20 to 44-year-olds, homicide, 27.6%. This is the community we were trying to talk to. The Trump administration, by the end of 2019, $75 billion of private investment had gone into these very distressed zip codes because of his opening up in the tax bill these opportunity for private money to flow in, and 500,000 new jobs were created. Now they're just destroying these same communities. What about that little person who's like, I'm trying as hard as I can, but my mama's on drugs, my daddy's in jail, and now they're telling that person that they can't even see a billboard that will give them a little bit of the truth. How are we going to solve that for that woman that was interviewed in Milwaukee that said, well, I kind of like the billboards? Or the man that said, well, I think you should take any job and then just work your way up.
Well, I hate to quote the person who said it, since that person no longer believes it, but it's "Si se puede." Yes, we can. We have to carry that message into those communities despite the lessons of victimization. We have to say, as we did on the billboards, yes, we can.
I know, I don't even like to use the word hope anymore, but you're right. We need to take the language back. But yes, we still say it. Yes, you can. Yes, you know, in fact, someone called and said that we should put it on put it on shirts and hats. And now, in fact, one lady called me and said, I've actually called my local school and said, can we put them in there? And she said, and can we put these truths onto T-shirts for our homeless shelters and other things? Let me ask you this, Jonathan, because it's a little legal question. If for some reason Dr. Allen has to take this into a tort arena, is there anything to stop us from doing other movements toward those kind of actions?
And I think that's the alternative that we're speaking of. You cannot silence an individual. You can't put a muzzle on anyone. And so you have the ability to wear and proclaim exactly how you feel. The public square is still completely open and still available. The First Amendment protects this particular speech, and we're able to use those venues, those avenues to get that message out. We're protected by the First Amendment.
I love it. Who was that said, we're not retreating, we're just advancing in another direction?
You used a word that I think you said you hate to use it, but I'm going to tell you it's the key word.
Oh, I know. I just don't like using it anymore because he took it from us, but I do like it.
We're going to take it back.
We're going to take it back.
Because the fact is, hope is the answer. And in your billboards, what you are offering is people a hope that they can move from where they are to a better place. And the one thing that the left can't allow people to have is hope outside of government intervention. Dependency. They have to have dependency, not hope.
It's so bad.
And so you hit right. That's why they had to take down your billboard, because your billboard hit them between the eyes with basic truths that gave people hope.
Scientific truths, moral truths, home truths.
Who they need to be victims.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, you just reminded me of a scripture that faith is the substance of the things we hope for.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
And when you put a
for
scripture
things
up
to
there.
come.
That's right. That
Hope
is
is for
exactly,
things to
that
come
is
because
exactly right.
we have faith in what is unseen.
Well, that's
yes,
right.
that's
right.
exactly what
Well,
we're
the
doing.
proverb that we put on the billboard, in fact, the question that was asked is, well, what's so offensive? Is it the proverb or is it the formula itself? I mean, it is a time-tested success sequence, and it is a continual program, Jonathan, because if they go to Urban Cure/Success, they're going to find 5 books to help them through these different stages. And so it was a full campaign. But I agree with you. We have to.
It's universal. It would work in that community. It works in every community, regardless of race. Those are very time-tested principles that I think even if someone has them on the top of the head, we should probably say now.
What they are?
What they
Oh,
were.
I know exactly what they are. Are you getting it? It is finish school.
Simple. The more
Take any job.
the more you learn, the more you
harder
earn.
than the person above you.
Exactly.
Get married. 2 are really better than 1. If you have rent at $1,000 and the 2 of you, it just makes it a lot lighter now. Save and invest.
Right.
That one's really easy.
Right.
If we would promote it, then people could build net worth. And all of the complaints we continuously hear about, they're trapped and redlined out of banks and can't save and can't buy a home and the net worth and the gap and all of these things. If you save and invest, you actually can become very aggressively in the middle class. And then, of course, to give back to your neighborhood. And did I miss any of them?
No, you didn't. You got it perfectly.
and by the way, the way out of generational poverty is save and invest. And the things you illuminated before that are the way to get to where you can save and invest.
You can save and invest.
So, and if you want to end generational poverty, save and invest, and you will end generational poverty because people will be able to inherit wealth.
That's exactly right. That's why I like personalizing Social Security.
That's right.
A good man leaves an inheritance for his
I think I learned that from you about 20 years ago.
Hey, listen, I'll be right back. I told you that I was going to bring you back to Frank, and so we're doing that right after this.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now to give you deep discounts, not just on my pillows, but also my mattress toppers, sheets, and so much more. For example, you can get body pillows regularly $89.99, only $29.99 with your promo code. With our 60-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Sleep well, America!
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
I know you were wondering what happened to Frank because I wanted him to answer 2 questions, and I needed you to get some more information from my panel before I had him tell us the answer to those questions, because I would like for him to then move us to what we need to do about it. So, Frank, thank you for staying over. Frank Gaffney, the founder and executive chairman of the Center for Security Policy here in Washington, D.C., has been working in these security matters for quite some time, knows anything and everything about communism, which is now in our children. And so I was asking you in the first segment about your experiences, because you were trying to sound the alarm that there's some challenges here, guys, and our kids are buying into Marxism and communism, and China's even behind some of this. People weren't listening then, and now our children are indoctrinated. And so the second part was how, and how do we turn it around? How did they buy something that has not been proven anywhere? It has never worked. And our country keeps flourishing. Just wrap this up for me.
A couple of quick points. I took an oath of office back when I was working in the government to defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you're right, I've gotten a certain amount of notoriety because you're not supposed to understand that there are enemies here within the United States. You know, McCarthy gave that a bad name. But he was right, that there were communists.
Well, and everybody knew he was right.
But he was canceled. He was an early victim of canceling.
Isn't that interesting?
And I was too, before it became cool.
I think they call it like blacklisting then.
Blacklisting is what they claimed he did, but in fact they blacklisted McCarthy. And they, from that day to this, have made anybody who warns about a fifth column or an enemy within a McCarthyite. It's unfair, it's untrue, and it's put us in the harm we're in today.
And now our
to your
children are
question,
being harmed, yes.
Our children are been, I believe, indoctrinated to believe that those other experiments with communism or socialism or Marxism or democratic socialism just weren't done properly. But this time, here in this country, we're going to do it right and it'll be great. That kind of combined with this idea that there's so many suffering people and there's so much social injustice and all the stuff that you hear all the time.
But freedom works for them.
Freedom works for everybody.
Everyone. And in this country, when you combine Christianity with capitalism and with our Constitution, which has a rule of law to protect us, it actually does work. So it's even a lie that they're trying to help the most vulnerable amongst us. So what do we do? How do we get to the place where we have enough understanding in our society to push this darkness back?
Well, the first thing is to get that understanding.
Okay.
Star, we have to educate both the kids who have been indoctrinated in this way, but also their parents, that this is the greatest country in the history of the world. And show them why. Show them the things that despite, yes, some failings, but overall, the opportunities that have been afforded to untold hundreds of millions of us.
So how much of this is just guilt? They just feel guilty because they have been afforded opportunity. How do we get beyond that?
We need to also make clear who is telling them that.
Right.
And it is Marxists.
Yeah,
It is people who are using race, among other things, to try to take down our country. They don't have the best interest of Americans at heart.
And it sounds compelling, I suppose, to say, well, we're trying to touch people we can't. I am a little privileged. We're going through all of these sound bites, but yet it's deeper than that. So I agree with you that the parents need to get much more involved. The challenge is also that so much materialism in our society that it's elite to go to one of these prestigious schools, so they don't even know what they're teaching the children.
Right. One other thing I found to be very powerful as an antidote to this kind of indoctrination and manipulation, it really is manipulation,
Yeah, it is.
Is what I call foreign-born American patriots. People who didn't have the privilege that most of us take for granted of growing up in this country, and who, as a result, know just how precious it is.
Hearing their stories. Someone very close to me just got his citizenship.
Well, there
and it's
you
just
go.
beaming.
Are
Yes.
they thrilled to be here? Of course.
Thrilled.
And do they understand so well how precious and how fragile this experiment is?
Right.
And I think those are voices that we need to really amplify, because I think they can help the rest of us understand we mustn't let this slip away from us. And you know, Ronald Reagan, as I said, my old boss, had this wonderful formulation. He said, you know, every generation faces an existential threat to freedom.
That's right.
We can't pass it on to them in the bloodstream. We have to fight for it ourselves, and we have to turn it over to them to do the same. And he said, if we don't do that, Star, we'll spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like to live in the United States when men were free.
Ooh.
I don't want to be condemned to that, and I know you don't either.
I don't either. And I think that what touches my heart is most and pulls at me and keeps me up at night is for those that haven't even been able to experience those freedoms yet, because they've been trapped in these failing schools, in these failing neighborhoods, by people who say they care about them, and these folks are the very ones that are trying to destroy the country from within.
Amen.
I think that, real quick, we're running out of time here. What is the one thing that we can all do? I know you have a book. You can also say, well, buy my book, but
Well, no, I
what is one thing we can do?
people to take responsibility for freedom.
Take responsibility.
It's their
for
duty
freedom.
to protect it. It's their duty to ensure that they're entrusting it to their children in pretty much the shape that we got it.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, we will have failed them terribly.
Yeah.
And in so many small ways, Star, just exercising, starting with your right to vote, you can demonstrate your commitment to freedom This time around, do it in person, because that's probably the only way you're going to be sure that your vote actually counts.
Which is interesting, because even that, to be so insecure, all of our foundations are destroyed. And I think a lot of people during COVID started realizing how quickly that freedom could slip away, and how are you really sure you want to trust the politicians? And all we hear is trust the science, the science, the science. Well, science also says that you can experiment with other things, and I think, but you can't go to church. It was really a frightening time for us. So I think that you're right. If we revisit freedom, if all of us make that commitment, that maybe we can turn things around.
Absolutely.
We
have no choice.
We don't have a choice even for this coming election. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that we have no choice. You hear that? We have no choice. But I'm going to be right back with some final thoughts. Wait, stop the music. I forgot. I want to introduce you to my friend. You need to meet my friend. Ariel is brand new citizen. Ariel Zimmerman, I can't believe it.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to have become a U.S. citizen after some time.
How long? Some time?
It's been since I was 16, so just a couple of years ago.
Wow. Well, a couple of years ago since you were 16. But, you know, it's exciting because we were doing some work together, and you were moving to the point of where you had to test, and then you had to do the questions, and the excitement of becoming a citizen. I just wanted to encourage our viewers, because so many don't think it's important, and you said that you just so love freedom. So I just wanted you to meet Ariel.
Today, a student in public school will pray or lead a Bible study. Today, a pastor will preach boldly the truth of the Scriptures without fear of the IRS. Today, the life of an innocent child will be saved, and a mother will experience the joy of a newborn baby. A distraught woman will find hope and choose life rather than death. Today, there is a strong voice defending God's created natural order of marriage and family. There is a defender of freedom in the courtroom and in the halls of Congress and in legislative bodies across the land. Today, all of this is possible because of the ministry of Liberty Counsel. People from all over America will find help and hope because of Liberty Counsel. The adversity they face will be turned into victory, case by case, law by law, person by person. Liberty Counsel is advancing religious freedom, the sanctity of human life, and the family through litigation, education, and public policy. And that is the mission of Liberty Counsel, to restore the culture by advancing life, liberty, and family.
That was an interesting show for me, and I hope for you. This is exciting times and also challenging times. And unfortunately, Clear Channel Outdoors responded to the intimidation of Black Lives Matters, and they took the Urban Cure billboards down. They said, "We strive to respect a wide variety of viewpoints on diversity and racial sensitivity." But can shutting down a powerful and truthful message because Black Lives Matters doesn't like it reflects respect for a wide variety of viewpoints? Our nation's shock after the terrible murder of George Floyd at the hands of a police officer was devastating. But the appall, unfortunately, put wind in the sails of Black Lives Matters and their allies of Marxism. But since America was founded on principles of Christianity and capitalism with a firm rule of law outlined in the Constitution, ideals of Marxism are polar opposite of these ideals that founded America. And the questions on the table today should be, what does America need? And what does Black America need today? What will fix our problems? For sure, suppression of freedom of speech, of expression, and of the press will make no one better off, especially for our most vulnerable and our poor citizens. Those living in our distressed zip codes and neighborhoods are the very ones that really need to be told the truth today. They need to hear the truth. They need our love. They need our message of personal empowerment. And this is a message that was being delivered at Urban Cure. And while I hope Clear Channel Outdoor has a change of heart and does not permit Black Lives Matters to intimidate them to breach their contract with Urban Cure, I also hope that you will engage the heart of the Lord to defend the poor and the fatherless, to seek justice for the afflicted and needy, to deliver them from the hands of the wicked. Because according to Psalm 82, they don't know. They don't understand. They walk in darkness. for all of their realities are unstable. And according to Psalm 10, they have been pursued by deceit and oppression. Some have lurked in their communities, and in now their not-so-secret places, they are murdering the innocent. Agents of God's enemies have secretly fixed themselves on the helpless. They wait as a lion in his den to catch the poor and draw them into his net, that the helpless will fall. They actually think God has forgotten. They actually think that God doesn't see them. But God has not forgotten. And he not only sees his enemy, but he sees that little lost sheep. And I believe that if more of us will go and rescue the most lost sheep, that optimism and praise and hope will be restored in our nation, and we will then be saved. Yep. And that's it for this week. And I pray to think with you again next week on Cure America with me, Star Parker.